Let's go again, Luis and Jimway. Anh và chơi đi đến Pedro. I think that bomb did good keep, as you call it, with the Akima, Hill River. Yeah, that's about all you need to know for right now, I suppose. First things first. I have done this presentation before, and I will tell you right now, this requires class participation. So don't be nervous. Pass these out. Please, pass them along. So this is called a presentation. I don't really like giving presentations in the traditional sense this way. I would like to make this more, I would say this is more of a discussion rather than participation. I'm not here to tell you what's right and what's wrong. I just want to share my own experience and how that relates, how I have related it in my life to our Himdag. And so, after much discussion with plenty of people, I landed on environmental stewardship through O'otham Himdag. And so, what that means for me is how us today, how we relate to our surroundings, to our environment, our lands. And we do that through our O'otham Himdag. For especially all the ones I already know, I know all of you have probably done something out in the environment that revolves around our Himdag. Whatever it is that you practice will bring you outside and will bring you closer to the lands somehow. So the papers that we passed out were just a very, very short list of O'otham words, particularly plants. Now this isn't totally a plant discussion. This is, I use the words for plants just to kind of share that knowledge of our Nyok, that the language part of it that we tried to keep up. And again, for myself, it has brought me closer to how I relate and how I see these plants and how I forgive me for sounding hippie-ish, but how I communicate to them, how I relate to them, and how I have that respect for them, especially in the things that I do in my life. So, well, we just kind of did this, like I said, this is just to talk plainly. I don't want to, maybe toward the end we can talk a little bit more on the scientific points of view, but that's not really my forte in that sense, which I like talking about those kind of things, but I don't think it's completely necessary at times. And how our culture relates to the environment. So, when I posed this question last time and I got a bunch of different answers. So when you think of our land now, okay, like don't look at the picture, everybody close your eyes or something. When you think of what our land looks like now, what do you think of? Anybody? Remember, class participation, please. Somebody. I'm gonna pick you out if, here you go.
No water?
No water, that's a big one. We don't really have a river, right? We call ourselves Akimar O'otham, yet we don't even really have a river. It's strange, but you know, there was once one. What do you think of when you say forest? Anybody? Air, water, that's another one. Do you ever think of home? If somebody said a forest, and you're like, do you think about home? Probably not, right? Like a lot of the last time, a lot of people said like pine trees, and up north, you know, where there's a lot of trees, those kinds of places. This is all right? Like there's no right answer. For myself, I think about up north, Flagstaff or Prescott or something like that, where there is like abundance of trees. I don't think of my home. I don't think of down the road from my house or anywhere. My late grandmother used to talk to me about what it used to look like. And for myself,
and I guess a lot of us, young people, I can't even imagine or really know what it feels like to be back then. And this is, maybe 100 years ago. My grandma was pretty old. But so when I would talk to her about what things used to be like, she would talk about her upbringing as a young girl back in the 20s and 30s, which is, for right now, that's a long time ago. And one of the things she always used to bring up is there was so many trees. A lot of my family, their roots come from Blackwater. So her grandparents would live in Blackwater. That was one of the places they stayed. And they would go over there during the summers. One of the things she used to say is they used to go load up the wagon, their uas carted, and go to Cuiva, go to the West End.
Your grandma? What is her name?
My grandma? My late grandmother's name was Glenna Pedro, right there in Sacaton. My Baba Abat was, what would be his name? Silas Pedro. So those are the ones that I grew up with. Not Silas, but my grandma. She was the one who was still alive during my time. So they would, like I said, they would load up their wagon, and then they would go to Cuiva to visit relatives, they said. But one of the things that always stuck out to me was that she said that they were never in the sun. And that kind of didn't make sense to me, because it was how we live in the desert. How come you're not in the sun? But she said that there were so many trees, that there was a road that was along the river that you could just ride in the shade all the way down. And that there was so many animals and so many birds and those kinds of stuff. To me, as a young person, I can't really imagine that now. Because I look at it now and everything is dry, right? It's an ak. It's not really an akimer, it's an ak. It's just a dry riverbed. Sometimes it runs, but it doesn't really. This is a picture of up north, or east, I suppose, northeast. This is at Gila Box Canyon. So this is the Gila River upstream, where there is a large section that does flow freely. It flows freely in other parts, near Wilcox and just past Florence. But this, I used to go here at least once a year for other purposes, ceremonial purposes. And I look at it and I'm like, oh, okay, now it makes sense, right? This is a lot. This doesn't look like Sacaton or Blackwater or wherever. There's not that many trees. You can go to Salt River, and then there too, along the river where the reservation is, and even farther up, there is still a lot of trees, and it looks pretty similar. But it is quite small still. Here it was just land. It was just open. Just how far the trees came out was astounding to me, and to see it like that was really eye-opening for myself. Even then, some of you who are older probably do remember there still being a trickle of water. There was still enough water to support a lot more than we have now. My mother, when we were out there, they grew up in Sweetwater. My mother's name is Rondell Norris. My grandmother, who just passed away recently, was Loretta Norris. So they grew up right there in Sweetwater. And she remembers there still being a lot of trees. So when she saw this and we were sitting out there, she was like, no, this is how it was when we were kids. There was still a little bit back in the 50s and 60s. So it's such a short time, that's my mother's life, that we see this drastic change of the way our environment looks. And for myself, I ask, how does that affect us? And how can we really relate to this when we've never seen it? It's kind of strange. That's another one. There's a picture that I took myself. This again, you see all these alpa, you see tour, everything that's out there. It's still a desert. If you look to the top of the picture, or even in the front right here in the corner, you still see what looks like our desert. It's just a lot more green. This is the same list you have. Pretty sure. Sorry if it's not. But this is the same list you have. So these, from my understanding and my upbringing, this is how I know how to say these words. So you all have them too. This is one of those parts where we do our class participation. Okay? Don't be nervous. Everybody speak loud, because I know you guys are probably really loud elsewhere too. But, okay, I'll say it, and then you say it, okay? With the first one, Qui. Qui. Chuord. Aupa. Hoitkam. This is 2 words, actually. Uus kokumut. Okay. Murdoch. Out. Hashan. Vapai. This one is another 2 word, because it's 2 words if you look at it. Hashan Baidak. This one looks a little funny, but the way I pronounce it is Iuk. Vakwa. Okay. Hard. Yeah. Horn. Bav. Quavor. Shugoi. And Tovash. Very good, very great. Thank you all, because I think that's kind of a really important part of it, is to recognize these plants and also recognize these names. And that way, like for myself, and for plenty of others that I've spoken with over the years, like Shugoi. I didn't know what Shugoi was called in English forever, maybe up until 10 years ago or so. I grew up thinking that's just what you call it, and everyone around me called it the same. So like I don't think creosote right away. I think, oh, that's Shugoi. But that's because we grow up with that. We grow up with that relationship to the plant. So, when you see it, you're free to take these papers home and just as a little note or a reminder, think about these names that we give them. This part is we're just identifying plants, okay? And I'm sure, I hope, maybe if you're not as familiar, that's fine too. But we just kind of look at them, let's say them. Who knows what this one is in the first picture? Not much. Qui. I heard somebody say it. Yes, it's a qui. Good job. How about the next one? Alpa. This one, we are looking only at the front tree. Does anybody know what that is? It's a hoitkam. It's an ironwood tree. This is the best picture I could find, so excuse me. But how about that side? Chuor. I will say this right here, right now, because that is a tree, to my knowledge, that we call chuor. In Miragankach, in English, that is a Gooding's willow tree. There is a difference. There is a desert willow tree that we call anam. It's different. They are both willow trees, but that one is called chuor. This one's 2-parter in the front, or to your, what is this, left. This is to your left. So there's 2 things in this picture. Let's focus on the front one. Avapai. And what about the back one? Hasha. And to your right? Murdoch. This is a lot blurrier than it is on my screens. I apologize. But do we know what this one is? Uuskokumo. Does anybody know what that means? Yes, it means this plant. That's what the name that we call this plant, Uuskokumo. But what would that translate to? It is arrowweed, yes.
Gray bush or sticks.
Yes. Uus is a stick. Kokumuk, skalmuk is gray. When you're all, somebody's like, you're all skalmuk and all ashy, isn't gray. Uus kokumuk, there's just gray sticks or gray bushes. How about the right side? Out. This side, left, to your left. Iuk. Yes. To your right. Vakwa. Everybody points this out at some point. Exactly. It's funny. To my knowledge, a gourd is a vakwa. Because that's just what it is. Then we think, oh, you mean vakwa, but that's different. That means something is watery. And same thing, like gourds carry water. Vakwa is the same thing. We're talking about different subjects though. Okay. So one of the things that I like to do in my personal life, I suppose, or that I've been more or less tossed into, I'll say that, is I like to build things. And in my life, because I'm young, I'm a man, I'm often the laborer. I have the energy, I can do it. And so I like to build things. I end up being the one who builds things, and this is an oroski. So when we talk about our past uses of these types of plants, I feel it's only right to talk about the things we would actually use them for. And this is an oroski. Translation, anybody? Roundhouse. Roundhouse. Ki, I just put ki because it's a single house in the picture, but kik, oroskik, meaning more houses. Just looking at it, what do you see? Let me put it this way. What do you see that it's made out of? What do you think they're using? Uskokumat. A lot of the filler you see that's vertical is uskokumat. You see the sticks, how they're laid down across it. What about the going across horizontally? What do you think that is? Not kui. Chuard. Chuard is, how would I say this? It's very bendy. Flexible is the word. And when you use you can use other types of wood. I have really only seen, with this type of key, I've really only ever seen them use chuard because of that property, because it's flexible. When you see something like kui gets really hard, and when it dries, it is very hard. So if it's really hard, it's probably not going to be as flexible, and it'll break. Same thing with alpa. Alpa is a very light wood. So it's strong when it's big, but when it's small like this, it's not as strong. The other thing about it is it's very long. Chuard can grow 20, 30, 40 feet in the air. So when you see how far it has to go around, it's the practical one you would actually use. And thinking about those plants, just those, right, that just what we talked about and what we can see right in front of us, I think it's only right to kind of give it that respect, because this is something that we would live in. This is something that people would grow up in or see around, especially, maybe not the generations that are living today, but past. And the only reason we are able to be here now is because people had the ability to make these things to live in. How about that one? That's a vato. Myself and Aaron actually built the two vapato that are outside. It was a project that we worked on here. But, so, I guess if you need us, let us know. But I've always heard the saying, I guess, is the vato was the living room of back then. Like, yes, you were in your oroski, you had an oroski, you probably slept in it. But like my grandparents always used to tell me, we just slept outside. They had a bit key, a mud house, but like we always just slept outside. That's what they always used to tell us. And like I look at these types of like historical pictures, and I see, for myself, it's like the size of the posts is what always draws my attention. The size of them, because it's like these things are meant to last. They're meant to be there. Yes, they are meant to degrade and be a part of our world, but they last a very long time. So what do you think that's made out of? It's a kui. Definitely kui. Again, remember, it dries really hard, so that strength, especially coming down, is a lot more than the others. You don't want something too flexible because you want it to stay upright. Again, I'm not telling you, I keep saying right and things like that, but I'm not telling you what's wrong or what's right. You can build things however you want, but in my own experience, that's what works the best, in my opinion. Same thing, what about the top? Look at the very top. This one's more familiar for a lot of people. For myself, the vatto I grew up under was at my grandmother's house. It was made out of railroad ties. The top was still filled with uskokuman though. But we used railroad ties, and I remember growing up, everybody had a vatto that was a bunch of railroad ties. Nowadays, you don't see it no more. I don't go out and buy railroad ties. Because again, I'm able-bodied, I'm able to go out into the desert. I do think it's right for me to go out and give my offerings to these trees, to pray with these trees, talk with them, and to harvest these kind of materials. And to show people what we used to do. It's not just in a picture anymore. These are things you can go out and see. You can, like I said, you can go outside right now and see them, some of the work that we've done, or throughout the community, other people. It's not just one person or a couple people. They're all over the place. Oh, this one had an animation on it. This one is, well, I put 3 different things here. Uksha, Unamas, or Kosin. They're relatively the same. To me, Uksha and Unamas are the same thing. It's something round, but no roof, like what you see. A lot of people would just call them a Kosin. Borrowed word from, I believe, cocina or something like that, Spanish, right, to say kitchen, because it uses a windbreak. Right, you have a fire. If you have a fire, anybody who's actually been around a fire, when you're trying to cook under that thing, you don't want it to be too windy. But what is it made out of? What do you guys see? Probably kui. I heard somebody say kui. These posts in the middle, in this doorway, to me look like kui. And around, what do you think that is around? Uskokuman. That one's like, I could tell, that's Uskokuman. Black and white, bad picture, whatever, that's Uskokuman. Same thing with going around. To me, that looks like Tuord. You see the one little support in the middle? And it goes all the way around. It's fairly thin, but it's pretty long. So I would think that's Tuord. We'll keep moving. So, I had to get a quick glimpse of where we're going to go from here. So those are just kind of things that I like to share when we're talking about like things we would used to use them for, in a sense of living, right? But there is all kinds of life, and all different kinds of parts in our lives. What else do you think we're probably going to go to? You got a glimpse of it. Tools, you can call them tools, yeah. So that's, again, when I say like this is not necessarily a strictly plant talk, because there's all kinds of stuff we use these for. So there's all different, there's more than I could cover in 2 hours. So, to your left, what do you think that is?
Paddle.
It's a paddle. Does somebody know what for?
Pottery.
Pottery. A whipping. If you're a potter, Is anybody a potter? You ever see people make pots? I don't have the patience to make pots. That's one thing that I don't do. But I've watched people make it. I see some of the process they go through. And again, to be a potter, you have to go out into the land. You have to find your bit, your clay, and how to process it. And even then, this is made out of a vapai. You can tell by kind of how the grain is. It's a softer wood. It's a lot easier to carve. But you see like these straight, small grains, probably vapai. What about, I know you know what it is, but what about in O'otham, O'othamach?
Usgat.
An usgat. Us, stick, gat, gun. Your stick gun. But an usgat. Again, another part that we have to use, especially back then, right? You got to eat. We have to eat. So hunting, right? Like this is another way that those plants are involved in that part of our lives is hunting. Because and back then you could make a bow. Some people still do. You can see the bows that are here on display that people made. I have other nephews who are practicing their bow skills and it's getting pretty good. How about these? Well, to the left. Sorry, I'm facing this way and the screen's that way. Anybody? Oh, shranchk. I have heard people say shranchk. I have heard other people say shranchpakut. Same kind of thing though. I mean, something you're hitting something. A war club. What do you think that's made out of? I can only speculate. Probably kui. Kui is another one that I've heard them made out of. Or hoitkam. Either one you can make it out of. Both of them are hard woods. Hoitkam is a lot harder. And when you let that thing dry out, it is very difficult to start carving. But you could do it. But then again, another part of it, warfare. Warfare still involves you having to be in touch with your surroundings, and depending on what you're making it out of. You have that understanding of what you are going to do. You know, you are putting your life on the line, but still, you have to have that respect for these types of plants. And so this one, I'm looking at her back. What is that? Kya. I hear people say kya. I hear people say giho. A burden basket. You could pretty much carry anything in there. I'm not going to say, oh, you used to use it for this thing and that's it, right? But you could pretty much use it for anything. Same thing with a lot of this stuff. You have multiple uses. But the picture, I just use that picture just to show off what it is. What do you think it's made out of, though? The late Royce Emanuel, but I knew him for some years before his passing, and he was one of the people from Salt River that still made them, and he made them off just learning and practice and over and over and over. The netting, what you see, what gets to the basket part portion, was made out of out. It's agave. It's a long process to be able to take out all of the fibers from them to make your vijna, your cordage or your rope, to start to weave the actual basket. I think they have one here too. I'm not sure. And then the rest of it, because there's a frame to it. To my understanding, again, from Royce and some others, it just depends on who you would ask, but it would be vapai, like the long sticks that stick out to the side that hold it up. Chuort, to have that circle, to make, because again, it's more flexible. And you know, it could be whatever, but that's kind of the general thing of it is, if you do these kinds of things, so we kind of went through like so many different little topics, like very fast, but these plants, our environment, going out is involved in every single one of them. Who knows this game? Taka. They have sticks. They call them their uoska. meaning that's their stick, it belongs to them. But you see, they still play this game relatively often. There's teams all over the place, but they have this stick. I guess it depends on where you come from. To my knowledge, they're mostly made out of kui, but some are made out of chur. This is a little different. So what I'm looking at is the bottom. Does anybody know what he has? What's it look like? Remember, I'll pick you out. I don't remember who's who. I asked for name tags one time, but he didn't give them to me. The bottom is a hifkut. So it's a rasp. It's not something you see many people do, but a hifkut is used for singing, O'otham Himdag, O'otham songs. A rasp, I think that is a rasp inside this box here. People are probably more familiar with your shavkut, to run your shavkut and sing, or to hit a basket and sing. In this instance, he is using a hifkut. It's a stick you rub and notched, and it kind of makes that same sound. But he's using this basket. To my understanding, it kind of makes it louder. It amplifies that sound, running it when you're sitting on a basket. So this one is definitely important to me because of what he's doing. He is singing. As a person who likes to sing, we'll get into that, I guess. I mean, not I guess, but it's a part of it. But it's like where to put it in is where I have difficulty at times, because it's a big thing. A hifkut, again, can be made out of all kinds of stuff. A couple elders that I know who've just made them used a really big shugoi branch. Some use hoitkam or kui, right? Like it just depends on what you're using it for, as well as your preference. But again, a basket. I don't think I have a basket on here. I'm just using this one as a basket. Any weavers? Some will use a weaver. I know it. I think I've talked to you about it somewhere. But just a basket in general. What is a basket made out of? Anybody? Come on. I know you know it. Yolk. So like you see the design. It's dark, it's black. Yolk. The picture I used was a green plant, but when they're dry, like you can see some of the bundles in the cases over here, they're black. It's a lengthy process too. It's a super, I don't even want to try. I mean, this is like too much for me to handle to be that patient. But also chur. Again, depending where you come from, it can kind of vary. From my understanding, Akhimar O'otham's style would be chur and yolk. Whereas you go down south, a lot of people use takui and different materials. They still use yolk too, but it's a process for those people who have practiced weaving to go out and actually have to pick it, to understand when it's ready to pick. It's kind of a short window to my knowledge. I'm not a weaver, but being around other people who have weaved, to be in that, to know when the seasons are changing, and you go out and you see the new growth, to be able to go out and pick it at a specific time, to check it, to make sure that it's not grown, it's not overgrown, to where it's going to be difficult to actually process. Again, you have to be out there, and you kind of you develop your own relationship and understanding of the seasons. Is it going to get hot? Is it too hot? Is it too cold? And when we start to practice these little subjects that we call our himdag now, that was once kind of just in commonplace. Now it's a whole thing, right? Where myself, I believe Aaron has, Wapkak has, to put on workshops just to be able to teach these kind of things. It is difficult to teach people that relationship you start to build with our plants and our lands, because it can be so intricate at times, and it's hard to digest, and it's hard to put into 1 2-hour talk. So if I'm going fast, I'm sorry, but it's a lot to kind of convey, especially how special it is. I'm sure for myself, I'm not saying everything because it's of how special it can be, which we'll kind of get into like our seasonality pretty soon. Again, picture, just keep thinking of like these pictures because of how drastically our environment has changed over the last 100 years to 50 years and how different it is now. Foods. We have to grow foods. We have to eat, right? To your left, what is this? Hard. Probably not what you imagine a hard to be if you just think hard and then you're like, oh, a squash. But that's an autumn hard. A lot of people just call it autumn hard because we think of hard, we think of summer squash or zucchinis. But that's what an autumn hard looks like. It's more like a pumpkin. How about to your right? Hoen. Corn. Everybody loves corn, right? How about these? To the left. Hashen Baidich. I hear you guys. I don't know where it's coming from, but you can be louder. I know you guys can be louder.
Stand up.
Stand. To the right. Hanam. Or Chardam. Hanam or Chardam. But I grew up over here. To me, it's Hanam. You go down south, they'll call it Chardam. Same thing, though. Quick, I guess, topic on this. Because with the help of Leland, I don't know why I was blanking your name, they asked me to kind of facilitate this last year's Hashem by the harvest that we did with the center here. It was an awesome time. I have to admit. Again, this is one of those things where it's my point to tell you like how important or how special these kind of things can be. Finding a place to go pick this Hashem Baidich was very hard. Not because I don't know where it's at, but because I have my spot. The place that we went was in the Sacaton Mountains. I've been harvesting there 15 years with my family, and it's usually just my family. Maybe a couple people here and there, 1 or 2 a year that are not, our relatives that are just kind of interested. But it's building that relationship out there that I know what it looks like. I'm out there, 4 or 5 times a week, especially during this season, just to go keep checking. You get out there and you see what birds are out. You see what it looks like. Is it ripe yet? Are the flowers gone? Are they still flowering? When you see them, and you've been doing it for so long, you can go out there and like, okay, 2 weeks, 1 week, a couple days. Or, as like last year, was like, we need to go now. Right? Like I was really set on, we just need to go now. I didn't want to wait a week. But because of it, because of the way our lives are today, we had to kind of make schedules. I'm not a big fan of schedules. But this is one thing that, for myself, that I didn't teach myself. It was a long process of trial and error on my own, along with going out with others, but eventually finding my way and how much it's helped me. Like, just to be outside. Hanam, I'm not good at picking Hanam. I can pick a little bit of it and kind of process some of it, but don't ask me to do that one. That one's a little much. Too many thorns. How about this side? Sugoi. That side? Dovash is a brittle bush. That's one that I've had difficulty with for a long time, and I'll explain that. So those were more or less plants that we eat, right? Like things that we involve ourselves in when we're talking about our diet. These are a little different. I chose these plants specifically because they're kind of well known. You see them a lot. Shugoi. There's so many things to say about this plant that I to not cover in depth would be a disservice for sure. But trying to make it short. What do we use it for? Medicine. It's a medicinal plant. I grew up with my grandmother, like I said, and although I would not necessarily call her a very cultural person, the thing for myself is that she was very old. And so because of that, she just grew up around what you do with certain plants. Speaking about plant foods, I'll take a quick step back just to kind of like make that point. I used to ask my grandma a lot, like, has she ever eaten O'otham Himdag or goody basho? Those, it's a melon. And she'd always look at me like, I don't know, like I know what it is. But I wouldn't say that. I would say, have you ever eaten traditional foods? Did you eat traditional foods when you were growing up? And she would look at me like, no, I don't know. I never did that. But when I started to ask her, like, can you teach me like how to talk O'otham? And then we came to these plants, and I was like, I grew some O'otham hard in our yard. And she was like, oh, we used to eat this all the time. I was like, well, how come you never said something? Like, I've asked you. And she's like, I don't know. It's just what we ate. Like, everybody ate it. Same thing with these. Well, shugoi. Asking her, like, do you know anything about medicinal plants? And she would be like, I don't know. Yeah, you drink it, right? But there's limits to it. You can't, again, growing up with it or growing up around it, there are limits to the things we use. A lot of people will be like, oh yeah, you drink sugar, as soon as you get sick, which is like, I do. But you don't overdo it. Because in turn, it can make you sick. It cannot be good for you if you drink too much. So, and a quick one, remind me to cut this out. Which we have to go over that. But anyway, some of the things I like to share, because I know you guys are from the community. From my understanding of shugoi, for me, one of the big reasons why it is so special and why we use it medicinally, why we use it spiritually, is because it is our first plant. In our stories, when we talk about creation, shugoi was the first living thing. Before people, before animals, before the world was really set in place, that the Nathagam, this creator, made shugoi, and he placed it on the earth. So it was the first living thing. There was nothing before that. A lot of stuff comes later, ants, other animals, later on people. In the science world, a lot of them, I guess in the last 10 or so years, shugoi, creosote, was in the news a couple times because of its longevity, its lifespan. It is a replicating plant. So in that it doesn't really die, it just keeps replicating itself over and over. So often you'll see a ring of shugoi. It's just a bush, right? But it looks like a ring because the main plant will die off while it still keeps growing. For myself, it's one of those things where it's like, it's a nice, I don't want to call it a coincidence, but it's like a nice reminder. A reminder to tell us that like these things have been here through, when we think about our O'otham Himdag and our stories, that these things have always been here. It's reassuring for me to think that when we talk about the morals, I guess, the morals of our stories, we can see them in real life, how they happen. On that same note, this plant, towash. Does anybody know what that means? So for a long time, I also didn't know what it meant, or I had like a vague idea of what it meant. Again, I lived with my grandmother for 8 years or so as a like preteen to teenager. So I spent like a lot of time with her, and that was around the time when I really started getting interested in a lot of these types of things. There's a part of our story that talks about this plant, and I asked her, what does that mean? Because she knew the plant. She was like, tawash, yeah. But what does that mean? And she used to tell me turning white. I was like, oh, I mean, it does. When it's very green, it's kind of like a pale green. When it starts to die off, it does kind of go gray. So I'm like, okay, it's kind of turning white. Up until recently, like within the last year, I've always just thought like, oh, turning white, that's what it means. Sitting with other elderly and listening to them talk and being able to ask questions, it means fading. I was like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Fading, turning white, okay, that's what it means. But the reason I have this in here is because in a part of that same creation story, when we're talking about the early creation of, I would call them 4 like essential beings of our creation. One of them is the ban, right? We always talk about this coyote, the ban. In my understanding, the ban wasn't made like everybody else. The ban was made because of the sun and the moon mating. And through that, when the moon, I guess, gave birth, I don't know how you want to describe that, but had the ban, she placed him on this bush, tawash. And so in the beginning, that was his first name. He wasn't called ban, he was just called tawash. So even though like that's kind of a short part, a very small, sped up version of that piece of a story, I see this plant all over the place. It's used all over as like a landscaping plant. But again, you know, for myself, especially in this time that we're coming up on, right? Like it's beginning to get cold now. I think of those stories, and I think of that little piece of that story when I see this plant. And it's again that reminder to tell you like these things have always been here. Wrong way. This is kind of a, moving forward anyway, this is kind of just the same things of things you do probably in your own life all the time. For myself, I like to garden. Apparently my jobs of lately are just starting gardens and then leaving. But that one is outside right now. Don't look like that right now. It's a little dead, but we're working on that. Gardening, right? I guess how I believe, it's putting your own self into these plants. Again, kind of paying homage to that legacy. Gila River is definitely big on reminding us that we were farmers. I don't personally like that because I feel like it leaves out a whole lot of other stuff. But yes, we were great farmers, no doubt about it. And even though we don't farm the same stuff, things look a lot different now, we can still do it on our own. So these are just gardens. These are 2 different gardens that I helped start, and again, kind of left, but it was up to them to maintain it. This one was for kids. This one was a gardening class we had here. And they were seeing and explaining how these plants relate to us is a whole thing. So I won't get into that right now, but again, it's another part of it, about how you want to get into traditional foods, you're probably going to start a garden to grow them, because it's not like we can just buy them all the time. But that's one way. What about this one? Yeah. This is actually my mom and my grandma, my late grandmother. I just thought it was funny when I took this picture, because they're like, that's her mom, and she's kind of like, she's starting to look the same. Yeah. But you can smell this picture, right? Like, you know what's happening. You're there. This is my entire childhood. My mom was very strict with us, and it was as soon as I could swing an axe, I had to be chopping wood all the time, because a lot of we maybe grew up a little bit rougher or whatever. I remember being a little kid, having to break apart sticks and start a fire so she could make chima. Same thing at my grandma's house. We wouldn't dare go near them. We went near them when they needed wood, and that was about it. But that was their time. But in doing that, you learn about having to be outside. Okay, I'm not judging. Not judging. I don't like seeing chima being made inside. It's weird for me because I always grew up doing it outside. But for myself, it's not because you can't do it, but I like being outside. To this experience, to having to, this is in the middle of the summer. This is broad daylight. It's hot, but you learn how much you can take. It's because it's rough, right? It's kind of not supposed to be easy. I think that's what a lot of it lacks when we talk about you can do all these things, but we don't talk about how hard it can be and the, not stress, but the difficulties that come with it. Do I always want to be standing outside and 110 right next to a fire, feeding their fire for throwing wood in? Not every day. I can be lazy too, but there's so much involved in that. Having to go out and get that wood. You don't burn green wood. If there's one thing that you guys take away from any of this, please stop cutting down green trees. Because I still collect wood, for myself, my own home. But the one thing I see a lot is people are quick with their chainsaws to just cut down a whole tree. And then they like to take the big stumps because they're easier to split. And then leaving the rest of the tree. I'll kind of get into that why if we have enough time. But you're not going to be able to use it for a good year anyway. You have to have dry wood. But you kind of learn to go out into the land and see all this undergrowth in these trees that's dry, it's dead. That's what you're actually going to use anyway. You might have to collect more, but that's a part of it. It's a part of paying that respect to these things, because if you want to keep doing them, we can't just keep cutting down all these trees. Same thing with all our other stuff, which I think that is here. Let me see how much time I got. We still got an hour. I got plenty of time. Sorry, Ruben. This is a little addition that I've added since last time. So I think whenever there are talks about the environment and how to be respectful or environmental sustainability, we think about ourselves a lot. And I don't like that, because people are not the center of the world, right? To me, our O'otham Himdag is how we fit into that world. It's not always us just taking things all the time. So I kind of added these things. This is more on the science side, but again, I'll explain why, because we have an hour, so I'll just keep talking. Akwi. This information was provided by Spadefoot Nursery, if you want to go look it up later. Keystone species. Akwi is considered a legume tree because they grow beans. Any legume is incredibly great at nitrogen fixing. They replenish the soil. When we were talking about gardening, one thing that I'll bring up in my gardening classes a lot is that when my grandmother was growing up in boarding schools, she said they had a lot of gardens. And one of the things that they used to do, that the elders would tell them, is to go dig under the mesquite trees and bring back that dirt. And that's what they would plant in. Because that dirt is basically like a compost. Once the tree starts to die, you get all this green that falls, it decomposes, and you go under a tree, and the dirt is real soft. If you ever just dig under your mesquite trees, the dirt is real airy, real soft. That's great for plants. Again, loaded with all of these nutrients over time. Because of that, or not, I guess not only because of that, all of this list here is just some butterflies that are larval hosts to this tree. A larval host, like, you guys know what a barred butterfly is. You guys know it's a worm or caterpillar to a butterfly. There's a stage where they're a larva. Where do they need to go go through that stage is these ones go for the mesquite trees. So if we didn't have any mesquite trees, we probably wouldn't have these. Again, it's kind of the same stuff. The flowers, the insects, you attract other things like birds. The bigger you go on the food chain, and the birds obviously use them for nesting. Uuskalkamuk. Arrowweed, remember that. Same thing. Again, it's just a species where this is what they are used for. Native bees. I'm sure everybody's like seen something about save bees and whatnot, but it's important for bees. Butterflies, hummingbirds. Birds use it for nesting. Again, a larval host to these moths and other hummingbirds. What else is on here? It's the same stuff. Alpa. There's all kinds of stuff with this tree too that we kind of just blew straight past because we make so much stuff with it. Cradle boards is another thing that people don't really use today, but has a lot to do with this tree. This has like a really big list, but same this list here is all things where it says those larval hosts. That's where these insects, moths, butterflies, whatever it may be, use this tree to reproduce. This one, I do find a lot of this stuff. Raptors. These trees are so big. They provide a great home for nesting raptors. Raptors, your owls, your hawks, your eagles, all those really big birds. Anytime that I go out, especially in areas where there's a lot of alpa, that's where you'll find them. Florence Village, or not, maybe not, well, yeah, Florence Village, there's a place, Florence Village, but Florence Town, to my knowledge, used to be called Salpic because there were so many of them there. That's what the town was, is many cottonwoods, Salpic. Tour. Again, same thing, a larval host. And I will keep bringing up this stuff about a larval host. Especially for those of you who are weavers, who practice weaving. Where do you go to get your chur? Not many places, right? You probably go to the same place, or you end up going to Salt River, or one or two places here in the community. It is very much disappearing. That, again, because of our environment is so different, it cannot support these types of trees. So there are a few places you actually see them. Josh Yazi, who works here, planted all those trees on the side of the building, just so it was a place where you can harvest. That's one, again, a thing that you can do. You can plant these trees. Those of you who are weavers, maybe you go out and you break a branch that might be a little too big, or is obviously too big. Those things can be propagated, and you can keep growing these trees. Again, important for native bees, other nectar-thriving insects. Beavers. Beavers. This is like a very, I'm going to try to make this short, but I was reading this transcript of an interview with this elderly man from the community, and I believe it was around the 50s. And in that transcript, he was talking about beavers. Again, as a young person, that seems like wild to me to think this man was talking about beavers that lived just north of Olberg because there was still water. He talked about beavers damming up the ditches. That's what they do. But to think, can you guys imagine a beaver like walking down the road in the ditch or something? I can't. Let's move forward. Same thing, Hashan. So much. It's hard to, again, it's very difficult to kind of cram everything into one thing. As far as ecology goes, yes, keystone species, the bat, the dove, the woodpecker, a flicker, a verdin. Those are all culturally important birds. Those are all things that we sing about, let alone vapai. I'd say the vast majority of people, when they make a shavkut, is vapai. Even then, I was always told, well, in my later years for sure, I was guilty of it, but if you're making a shavkut, you don't need to take the whole thing. You take what you need, and you use what you need. So that's the end of that stuff, okay? A part that may be more on the discussion side, so feel free to chime in when you want to. We went over so much stuff. Crafts and food and gathering and a little bit of warfare, houses, structures. Those are all things that revolve around us going out and harvesting plants and materials. For many people that I've talked with and worked with, at times when we have newer people who aren't so familiar with these kind of things, a lot of the times it's difficult to tell them, like, hey, don't do that. Like, you don't need to cut this down or cut it better, right? Like there's plenty of stuff. This one's a big one for me because I use this a lot. Myself and Aaron had this discussion a year ago or so. There's not a lot of Uwazkalkamut in the community anymore. When I was growing up, it was all over the place, and in the fields and the canals, wherever. Nowadays, there's not too much. But when I go out and harvest this stuff, I often see people cut it like right in the middle because they think they want the green part. That's not going to be good for that plant. It'll be better if you cut it at the base. It regrows. It regrows. It is a weed. It's very. It's a very hardy plant. It'll just keep growing if you let it. If the conditions are right, it will grow back stronger. Problem is, people will often just cut them, leave them. When you come back to start cutting them again, or somebody who needs a bigger load of them, they'll be all ugly. And that's not saying they're ugly in like the aesthetic sense. Like I don't want it just because it looks nice, but it's how we use it. A lot of the filler comes from the stick, the actual base of it. If you ever had to build a vato or an oroski or been a part of it or seen one, you can see how much it takes. And the holes that are in it, it takes a lot of it. And it's not just the green part, right? It's everything. That's a big one. Again, the trees. Please stop cutting down green trees. Use the stuff that you're given or that you're intending to use. Because when we start to mess with, like it is now, okay? Like it is now, we mess with our environment as human beings. Not us as O'otham, but us as people, human beings. We don't have a river, and it's caused our lands to change drastically. And because of that, how many butterflies do you see? How many flycatcher birds do you see? Hummingbirds, verdins, woodpeckers? Not a lot. Macaws? Never. We don't have that environment anymore. The reason I bring those things up is, again, for myself, as a person who likes to sing, as a singer that I've been doing for some years, those are birds that we sing about. The orioles, the gigitor, the swallows, Well, the moic, the macaws, hickovic, the woodpeckers. Blackbirds are pretty much still around, but all these other birds. When we talk about our himdag, I feel like the other side that I don't really, because I don't necessarily like writing it down, is kind of the thing there. Our spiritual side of things, right? Like our stories, our songs, our different practices. I personally don't like writing that stuff down, so I'm not going to write it down on here. It's something that I would rather just share my own thoughts on. But I feel, again, this is my opinion, I feel that we kind of lose a lot of that connection to these birds, and particularly those songs, about how special they are and how special they can be. People that do sing, obviously they build that connection through songs, but to imagine being able to see these things all the time, in the fields, in the trees, wherever you are. If you're not familiar with songs, people say songs come to you in dreams, so we call them song dreamers. I'm sure it was probably some of that was probably covered last week if you attended the speaker then. But our songs come from dreams. Someone dreams these songs, and they come from that spirit of whatever animal being it is. So when we start saying series of songs, it's because it comes from one dreamer. One person is dreaming these songs, and it's from that bird. A lot of them are, I'm saying bird because a lot of them are birds, but there are plenty of other songs. Having that understanding, it's like, I've never seen a macaw, but I know there's macaw songs. I see woodpeckers once in a while. I can only think of maybe 3 woodpecker songs. There's a whole other side to that conversation about why we end up losing songs, why we end up losing stories. For myself, a lot of that goes back to a lot of this stuff, our environment, because we end up losing the importance of where we're at. What did you use this one? Oh, I don't know what happened. But anyway. I feel like because of this stuff, because of what we would deem colonization, we lose a lot of that importance. We lose because we need money, we need jobs. We have to pay our bills. I'm not saying those things are bad, but there's plenty of things that we can still do and to keep up that knowledge from disappearing. And with the way things are, growing these things and to not just always be taking, I think is kind of like one of the main takeaways that I like to share, because it's vitally important, especially for those of you who do practice some of these types of crafts, whether it be singing, whether it's basketry, weaving, hunting, whatever it is, that you understand what that plant is able to do and how you are going to support this plant. Because again, without a lot of this stuff, all of the plants that we talked about, is a very small portion. But without them, we would lose all of the things that we think about when we think about our himdag, right? We lose our hunting, we lose our weavers, we lose our singers, because those are all things that we have to go out and do. We have to either grow our gourds, we have to plant our seeds for our foods, go out and harvest the chur for your baskets or your bows, whatever it is. You have to be out there. Is there any questions?